let's talk about some tips for navigating the post-lust, post-puppy love phase of a relationship, specifically for water signs. Now, this isn't just for water signs. This could be applicable to anyone that it resonates with. I think one of the first things to keep in mind is that every relationship at some point, there will be a shift when, you're not suddenly just so enraptured just to be in your partner's presence. In that early puppy love stage, like you'll drop anything to be with them, physical touch, any kind of just, that whole falling in love phase. It's incredible, it feels good, it's intoxicating. And especially for water signs who, the currency through which they experience the world, the way that they get meaning from the world is through emotional experience. And relationships, romances, that really stokes those receptors. It's so energizing for water sign people. I think it's energizing for anyone, but especially water sign people. Again, because it's meaning, it's how they create meaning, and that emotion is something that's tangibly meaningful to them. How you create meaning out of the world, it affects everything. It affects how you prioritize, it affects how you present yourself and make decisions. And so the reason I say this is a bigger thing for water signs is because of that. They tend to be drawn into romances or relationships, or else they select opportunities to pursue those kind of things over maybe earth signs or air signs, who obviously still appreciate intimacy in relationships, but come at it from a different perspective. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. Don't be caught off guard by the fact that there's this letdown. Letdown is a bad word, but there's going to be this moment when suddenly you'll start to see some of the flaws of the person, or it's not just like one of those things where it doesn't matter what we do, we could just like stare at each other's eyes and we could, pass hours. Suddenly it's like, all right, you want to do something? Like you start experiencing real life things in the context of the relationship. Boredom or things that maybe you overlooked previously are now more noticeable. Maybe you unconsciously ignored them, or maybe you deliberately did. In any case, those things kind of start coming up. You really have to set yourself up, the water sign person, to be okay with that, to not internalize that, to not panic, to not also try and recreate that or force the relationship to continue to be in that stage when it's not. Because eventually, not saying all relationships last forever, but the ones that do will inevitably have to make it through this sort of challenge part, or, it's sort of like a transformation. It's the death of one part and it's the birth of a different part. And aside from one night stands or flings or stuff like that, a lot of short-term relationships that maybe aren't meant to be, they will often die down in this stage. The danger or things to keep in mind is that people don't like change. People don't, especially for water signs, when they're feeling the change. Sometimes it's subtle things like texts are returned slower or priorities slightly shift, and they can sense that something is maybe changing when previously things were just, felt different. All this is okay. And I think the most important thing to keep in mind, and it's counterintuitive sometimes to what you want to do. Maybe you're feeling withdrawal, almost like a drug withdrawal from intense lust that, you're trying to maybe grab on tighter or force it, or maybe you're instead directing that aggressive energy inward and saying, oh, does this person not like me? Is it something that I did? The best thing you can do is be patient, take a deep breath. Not everything has to happen immediately. This is a time when you really should try and get back in touch with yourself. It's easy for water signs in the first parts of relationships to throw everything else overboard and dive in. Fire signs can have this tendency as well. And sometimes the drop off is even more abrupt. But you will never survive any kind of relationship, no matter how good it is, water signs, if you give up on loving yourself and having really like a healthy type of selfishness. And this is so hard for water signs, I think, to let themselves be okay with, and then, actually like practice. They can be very self-sacrificial or martyr-like, and they're nurturing, and they want to take care of people, and they want to heal and all this stuff, which is great. It's a superpower. It can go too far. But this is a checkpoint for you to take stock. Where am I? Am I in charge of my own energy? Am I feeling comfortable in my own skin? Do I feel safe in my own skin? Have I left myself? Have I become someone that I'm not? Maybe you feel very much like yourself, or you feel like this relationship is really good, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's more just important to really take time to connect with yourself instead of trying to gather information. Look inward and decide what it is you need and take stock. I think personally, like in past experiences or past relationships, I've experienced this time is almost like a time of panic. It's like, oh no, things are changing. I want them to be the way that they are. And then I get so focused on attuning to the other person's emotions and meet them where they are going, or maybe they're growing, that you completely pull out the rug from yourself. And then what happens is that this is really where like unhealthy attachment or unhealthy sort of commitment or chasing can kind of start happening. I'm rambling a lot. What I'm trying to drill in is just, this is the time, if you've not been good on journaling, not been good on doing the self-care things, to recenter and get back in touch with your intuition. Get yourself in a place where you remind yourself, look, this relationship was great, but before it started, I was still me, and I was fine, and I was safe. And in order to build the next phase of the relationship, you really want to do it from a place of being solidly in your own footing, in your own identity, not in a place of chasing, not in a place of forcing, not in a place of putting out a lot of needy energy. You want to do it from a place of, this is me, this is what my needs are, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I've enjoyed, this is something that I want to pursue if it works out, but it's like okay if it doesn't. Getting yourself in this headspace can also just help you make sure you're reconnecting or just giving some love to your intuition. Water signs are extremely intuitive, and a lot of times, like, if you know deep down that it's not going to work out, or you know it's not quite right, you will probably know. You'll kind of feel it. And what happens is, if you get into this grasping and you're just reacting to the shift in the relationship, you don't actually end up listening to your intuition. You're treading water, you're flailing, and maybe you kind of force it. You can forge a connection and you go on, but then you get further entrenched, and it becomes an unwillingness to obey the sunk cost fallacy. You start doubling down, and then, being the kind of emotional beings that you are, you start attaching narratives like, oh, but yeah, maybe it's not great, but we've been together so long that it's like destiny, or like, now I need to work it out because we spent so much time, or yeah, it's not great, but now breaking up at this point is gonna be heartbreaking and painful and shitty, and I don't really want to do that. I'm gonna worry about that later. You want to avoid getting down that track. And I think that this time can be scary. It's a time of change. It's a time of uncertainty, but I want you in your mind to frame it like you're getting off of one train ride, right? One train ride is dead. It's over. You're getting off. Before you pick up momentum and inertia on the next part of it, make sure that you're sure about where you want to go and if it's the right train. And all this stuff, these are cliches or platitudes or sort of obvious things to say, but helpful reminders. I think just having these things in the back of your mind, having a little bit of wisdom. Not that this is all that wise. I'm just, shouting things as, water sign from personal experience and things I've observed. It could be helpful. That's all for now. I don't know how short this video was, but talk to you guys soon.